Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who've just joined us, who we've just joined, apologies for the delay. My name is Saul Klein. I'm the chair of the Victoria Forum and the dean of the Gustafson School of Business at the University of Victoria. As we begin, again, for those of you who weren't at the previous session, I'd like to acknowledge with respect that we're on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples and the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations. Welcome to all of you. We have a short program this evening, after which, and even during which, I encourage you to continue to eat, drink, and maybe socialize a little bit less until we're done. This reception, under the banner Celebrating Peace, Promoting Diversity at Home and Abroad, is co-hosted with Pearson College, and we'll hear more about that later. I'd like to introduce you to a number of speakers, beginning with the President and Vice-Chancellor of the University of Victoria, Professor Jamie Cassels. So please welcome Jamie.
Thanks very much, Saul, and good evening, everyone. Along with Dean Klein, I want also to acknowledge with great respect the Lekwungen-speaking people and the Esquimalt and Songhees nations, whose chiefs welcomed us so warmly a little earlier on. It's my real pleasure to welcome everyone here on behalf of the University of Victoria. We're so pleased to co-host this event with Global Affairs Canada and with our good colleagues at Pearson College. We've just come from and many of you have been there, a wonderful, exuberant panel discussion with our four panelists, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Perry Bellegarde, Ms. Roberta Jameson from Inspire, the Honourable Kim Campbell, and the Right Honourable Paul Martin. And I know we all came away having learned a huge amount. I know I learned a great deal, but my main takeaway in listening was understanding and seeing a marvelous illustration of the truism that in grappling honestly and courageously with our greatest challenges, we see our greatest opportunities. I'm real pleased tonight to let you know that we're joined by a number of very distinguished individuals. The Parliamentary Secretary for International Trade, Pamela Goldsmith-Jones, was with us for much of the afternoon and has just departed, but I know that our Mayor is going to say a word or two on her behalf. I believe that our Minister of Justice, Jody Wilson-Raybould, is joining us. I had an opportunity to greet Senator Yuen just a little earlier. The Honourable Jinny Sims, the Minister for Citizen Services, has also joined us this evening to bring remarks on behalf of the government. And I'm going to, Saul, with your permission, I'm going to change up the program a little bit because the minister has a helijet to catch in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to welcome the Honourable Jinny Sims to the podium.
Thank you very much, and that'll also keep me short because there is a helijet waiting as well. But really, on behalf of the Premier of the province, John Hogan, and our government, I want to say how truly touching it is that we're having this conversation right here in British Columbia, here in Victoria, and I want to thank both of these sponsoring organizations, Pearson and UVic, for hosting this. So thank you so much. And you know what we're doing tonight here is having a conversation to enrich our dialogue around diversity and inclusion in Canada and abroad, and to plan a path to identity to identify what each of us can do to advance the agenda here at home and around the world. As many of you know, I am the Minister of Citizen Services for British Columbia. I'm not going to explain what that is. I was also a former member of Parliament and a critic for immigration, multiculturalism and citizenship, a critic for international development, and critic for Employment and Social Development Canada. Not bad for a girl transplanted into England at the age of 9 without speaking a word of English and the only brown face in her whole school. I was born in India, as I just said, and at the age of 9, my family transplanted us kids to a very cold and dark and gloomy country called England. It was October. I grew up in England, where I went through high school, university, had amazing experiences, and became a teacher because I was too short to be a pilot. Half an inch too short. I passed all my exams, but failed my height requirement. And I ended up coming to Canada just for a year or two while Margaret Thatcher was kind of in charge of education in England. But I can say I fell in love with Canada, with its multiculturalism, and decided to make it my home. So this is where Canada has given me my children, my son and daughter, my grandchildren, and my great-granddaughter. So this is my adopted country. I chose it, and I can really say that I'm a very, very proud Canadian, but I am, like many of us, except for our Aboriginal brothers and sisters, a true transnational, because I've encompassed 3 continents to get here. I have been privileged to have taught both in England, in Quebec, and of course here in BC. To me, true inclusion, and I know that's the topic and I want to get to that, is not about tolerance. It really upsets me when we talk about just acceptance and tolerating each other. Nobody wants to be tolerated. You know, just think about that for yourself. When somebody says, I tolerate you, how does that make you feel? So to me, inclusion is not about tolerance. To me, true inclusion is about celebrating both our similarities and our differences and embracing them. And that is what we have to aim for. I often say my family is like the United Nations, as many of our families. When I went to school in England, I met this guy. He was a Catholic, Caucasian, married him. I've had my kids, often been asked if I adopted them because my daughter was blonde, and it was a number of times, how long did you have to wait to have her? And I would say 9 months. That's exactly how long it took. And so back in 1971, when I got married, it was not that usual to see cross-cultural, intercultural marriages, though now when we talk to people, we see a lot more of that. And what I want to challenge you to today, for each and every one of us, and it's a challenge I wake up to every single day, is each of us have a collective and a personal responsibility to address systemic racism and barriers to inclusion. It's not somebody else's job. It's each and every one of us. As well as that, we have a responsibility to help build a more inclusive province and a country and give renewed hope for a more just world. And that can only happen when we celebrate our diversity. So I ask each of you here tonight to be leaders, to take the time to embrace our differences and celebrate our diversity, to choose to see the goodness in each other as we plan our future, and to work collectively and individually to advance diversity, both domestically and internationally. Have a wonderful evening and enjoy your sessions tomorrow. Thank you.
Minister, thank you so much for those opening remarks. As Dean Klein said, this is the first inaugural Victoria Forum. And in this year, what theme could be more important than diversity and inclusion? The panels over the next several days deal with issues as diverse as inclusive economic growth, reconciliation, the meaning of climate justice. And as I said, a wonderful opportunity to both engage with some of our greatest challenges and surface and reveal some of our greatest opportunities. These types of events, of course, require collaboration and sponsorship and work with so many different partners. And I'm not going to list all of those partners except by way of introduction to recognize that our partnerships with our surrounding municipalities, including Oak Bay, Mayor Nils Jensen, and in the case of this conference, with the City of Victoria and through our Mayor, Lisa Helps, is a wonderfully constructive way for the university and the municipality to engage in creating a platform for such an important event. So that is by way of introduction to our Mayor, Lisa Helps.
Thank you, Jamie. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to explain later in my very short speech about the quality of my voice and what I think it means for this conference. And there is a relationship. But before I do that, I want to begin, as we have begun this evening, by acknowledging that we're gathered here on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my remarks as well, and about reconciliation. But before I do that, if you can believe it, I've been empowered to speak on behalf of the Government of Canada. I know, when does this happen, right? So our Minister of Justice, Jody Wilson-Raybould, as well as a Member of Parliament, Pamela Goldsmith-Jones, both had to leave, and they said, Mayor, please bring some remarks on our behalf. So I've been entrusted to do that. And what they wanted me to let you know is that the Government of Canada is very happy to be participating in this very important inaugural Victoria Forum. And they also wanted me to communicate that our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is a champion of diversity. Not only diversity of different racial groups, including Indigenous folks, but diversity and inclusion in its deepest meaning in all forms. Gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered. They wanted me to really emphasize that the Government of Canada is working in everything that it does to foster diversity and inclusion. So that's a message from the federal government. Both of those wonderful women wish they could be here, but were not able to be here. So that's their message. All right, I'll tell them you clapped. I'm going to be in Ottawa next week and I'll see them, so I'll let them know that their remarks were warmly received. In terms of my voice, and this is something I want us all to think about as we work together for the next couple of days. As an elected official, you're supposed to stand up and be strong and be seen as always together. And standing up here, I lost my voice on Wednesday. Thankfully, it's come back. There's a certain amount of vulnerability that's required. And I thought, what a poignant situation, what a poignant message, because as we work over the next couple of days, there's vulnerability required of all of us. We have to approach these very important discussions of inclusion and diversity at home and abroad with vulnerability. We have to show up to the conversations, setting aside what we think we know, and instead being vulnerable, putting up our hands and actually saying, I don't know. We have to engage in what the philosopher Michel Foucault calls ethical listening. And he says, when we listen ethically, it means that we're actually changed by what we hear. Reconciliation. The City of Victoria has been engaged, as Chief Thomas said, for many years in building relationships with the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. But this year, we declared it a year of reconciliation. And we, again, going back to this letting go of what you think you know, showing up vulnerable and willing to be engaged and challenged, we thought we knew how to do reconciliation. And so we went to the nations and said, we're going to create this task force and we'd like you to appoint members. And they said, slow down, Mayor. What we want to do is reconciliation on our own terms. We want you to create a city family, not a task force, a city family. And we want you to form a family with the city and the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. And it really rocked us. It rocked our council to not have a task force, to not be setting the terms. I know, right? Councils love task forces. So instead, we've embarked in this really nation-driven way of reconciliation, and I am part of a city family which involves Songhees and Esquimalt members as well as members of the city. And we're embarking on reconciliation through what they call and what we now call our reconciliation program. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but that's just an example of when we show up thinking that, for example, a task force is the way to go, and when we can step back, and whether it's reconciliation or any other form of diversity or inclusion, when we can step back and listen ethically and be changed by what we hear, and then through the changes in what we hear, take different action. So that's my hope for all of us this weekend, that we can show up vulnerably, that we can listen ethically, and that we can make real change coming out of this first inaugural Victoria Forum. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Helps, and that's an inspiring story and way of modeling at least one way of working together. Speaking of working together, I want to acknowledge a very important partner in organizing this event in Pearson College, and in a few moments you'll hear from the president of Pearson College, Désirée McGraw. Désirée, I hope you'll allow that to be the introduction, and as I then introduce a short video for you all to watch, and following the video, I'll invite Désirée to say a few words. Thank you.
We have this community of people from around the world who all work together with a goal of peace and the sustainable future for all of us.
We have such different perspectives and different ideas, different backgrounds, and we bring them together and people are willing to share them.
To come to a school where there was literally people from countries I didn't even know just excited me. It really attracted me. And I think that was what really drew me here.
The fact that we are all here and we live together is what brings us together and makes us stronger.
I remember a student saying, before being Muslim, for example, before being a man, before being from this country, I'm a human being, and I learned that here. They were selected, not because they had money or not, but because they were doing something that was maybe even challenging the status quo. They want to make changes, they want to look for a different future, and many of them, they know that they have the power to make it happen.
I would love to continue in a major that will make me able to do something in the world, to make a difference.
I came from a school system where everything was very linear, and I could immediately see what was coming next for me. We're kind of allowed to do what we want in order to further our learning. If I want to build a vacuum cannon in the physics lab, if I want to build a canoe, then I can do that.
If we could enable the students to make mistakes and also to challenge us, in my mind that is the biggest thing we can do, simply to enable them to challenge.
Everybody, the moment they step on campus, is stepping out of their comfort zone. That sense of actually being somewhere when a lot of things are not familiar actually enables an acceleration of learning and understanding.
I found a lot of possibility in my life. I started to try a lot of new things I never tried before.
We have an amazing relationship with our teachers where hands-on learning, we make it a reality instead of a construct.
And when you really experience what you're learning, it creates so much more broad learning and so much deeper learning.
We're constantly discovering new things, and that's, for me, changing the way I see education. I don't see it as a classroom anymore. I don't see it as an institution. I see it as a way of going through life.
Thank you, Jamie, for that introduction and for including Pearson College, in fact, for inviting us to co-host the opening of this incredible, historic Victoria Forum. I have to say that the theme of this forum, diversity and inclusion, could not be more aligned with Pearson College's own mission, which is to make education a force to unite peoples, nations, and cultures for a more peaceful and sustainable world. So it's pretty mission aligned. So we're really pleased to be here. And I want to also thank the organizers. We're off to a great start to this really dynamic weekend. And I know that the mayor had to leave, but I just love that your mayor is quoting Michel Foucault. That is very cool. I'm from Montreal originally, and we've just elected our first woman mayor, and I know that they will be connecting. But I digress. I want to just acknowledge it's wonderful to see so many friendly faces in the room, our host families, our faculty, board members, patrons. Thank you so much for being here. And it's wonderful to see you here. We are moving along because we know we got a bit of a later start. I hope that you'd enjoyed the video presentation. It's just a small taste of what happens at Pearson College. It really is the vision of Lester B. Pearson, we celebrate Canada this year, the 60th anniversary of him receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. And it was his vision to bring a United World College to Canada, and specifically to the Pacific Coast, to this part of the country. And so we're really investing in young people at a formative time in their lives to have a transformative experience so that they can go on and transform their communities, their countries, and the world. And I think you saw in our video, 91% of our students are on scholarship. They come from every part of this country and every part of the globe. So it is truly a deliberately diverse community. And you'll have a chance to meet more of our students. But first, I I would like to introduce you to a very distinguished alum of the college, someone who came to Canada from Singapore and graduated in 1981, and that is Senator Pao Wu. Senator Wu is widely recognized, as you know, as a leading thinker on international economic issues and Canada-Asia relations. In fact, prior to becoming a senator, he headed the Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada. He was appointed to the Senate by the Prime Minister in October of 2016, and he assumed his seat almost exactly a year ago. And then, subsequently, just this last September, he was elected the leader of the Independent Senators Group. So I'd like to invite Senator Pao Wu to come and share his remarks with us.
Thank you, Désirée, for the very kind invitation. Good evening, honorable ministers in absentia, perhaps. I'm not sure if you're still here. Honorable, your worship, of course, who may have left already. President Cassels, other distinguished guests, friends, colleagues. It's great to see so many familiar faces, faces from even my time at the Pearson College many, many years ago. I'm just so thrilled to be able to join this event, which is a celebration, of course, of the Victoria Forum, but also an opportunity to talk about why Pearson College is such a suitable partner for this event. I wish there had been a Victoria Forum when I was a student at Pearson, but that was the previous century, and things were different in the previous century. We didn't have cell phones back then, and other things. But you know, even back in the late 70s, early 80s, I could see that the conditions, the ingredients, the raw material for the kind of event that UVic is hosting the next few days were already in place 30 years ago. And I'm referring, of course, not just to Pearson College, which is a crucible for experimentation of ideas and viewpoints from around the world, a place where, as we heard in the video, when you step on the campus, immediately you're out of your comfort zone. The whole idea of diversity and inclusion was in the DNA of Pearson College well before diversity and inclusion became buzzwords. But it's more than just what Pearson College stands for, stood for and stands for. It's also about UVic. UVic as a prestigious institution that I believe is the university in Canada that has the most out-of-province, out-of-local region students, again reflecting that, that magnetic quality of bringing in people from around the world, from different parts of the country, because they come here to experiment, to try out new ideas, and to expose themselves to perhaps difficult conversations and to challenges that make them better people. This partnership, this combination of Pearson College and UVic is a very, very potent one indeed. But it goes even beyond that, and it goes to the very community of Victoria and the surrounding region, which I came to know quite well in my years here and since moving to British Columbia. This is a community where people come from all over the world, from all parts of the country, and they come here bringing with them diverse experiences and ideas and knowledge which enrich the community, which is why this is a community that craves learning, that craves knowledge, that is open to diversity and inclusion in a way that very few communities are. So the Victoria Forum really is in many ways tailor-made for this part of the world, for this particular geography that we're in, and I really want to congratulate UVic and the Gustafson School, first of all, for taking on this initiative and for the brilliant idea of partnering with Pearson College on this joint venture. Let me just conclude by saying that everything I have learned about the importance of diversity and inclusion, and particularly about listening to different points of view, very, very divergent points of view, I first learned at Pearson College with a roommate from Egypt, from Germany, from Holland, from exotic Canada as well. learning to live with teenagers, late teens, with very different perspectives of the world, not just in terms of how one conducts oneself personally, but on very difficult global and political issues which, of course, I continue to deal with today in the Senate as an independent senator. So let me just thank all of you for supporting this venture. Let me thank you, Vic and Pearson College, for hosting this reception, and to all the sponsors as well for their generosity, and to wish this event many, many more years of success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator, for that wonderful testimonial and témoignage. I know you're a proud alum, not only of Pearson College, but of course of UVic. So we couldn't, I think, have had a better representative of both of our schools, colleges and universities. And I think you said, you talked about how Pearson embraced diversity and inclusion before they became buzzwords. And I think that's true. And often I think we use those terms interchangeably, and a wise person told me diversity may be a fact, like Canada's diverse, but inclusion is a choice. And how we make decisions in our daily lives, big and small, inclusion is a choice. We can be diverse and still be exclusive, and in fact, it's often harder to be inclusive when you're diverse. So those two things need to go hand in hand. So we've had a chance to hear from one of our incredible alum. I'd now like to invite one of our amazing faculty to come forward. Andrew Sewell has been with Pearson College for over 20 years. He teaches philosophy and theory of knowledge and introduces the students to the joys of sailing the waters of southern Vancouver Island. So I'd like to invite Andrew, and then we will turn over to a performance by our students.
Thank you, Désirée. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with you my perspective, the perspective of a Pearson College educator, on the promotion of diversity and inclusion as Canada marks its 150th. To give you a sense of what it's like to be an educator at Pearson College, I'd like you to imagine that you're standing in front of a group of 15 teenagers. Now, before you panic, I got your back. The first thing we're going to do is simple. We're going to take attendance. And if you take attendance using the names of the countries that the students come from rather than their own names, it might sound something like Syria, Jordan, Israel, Iraq, Mexico, Canada, Italy. Oh, Italy is sick today. Okay. This is diversity, right? And it is beautiful. But it's only one type of diversity. It's national diversity. And when Pearson College opened its doors in 1974, it had in mind more than just national diversity. Because in 1974, national diversity at educational institutions wasn't a particularly new idea. What was an innovative idea at that time, and I believe it is still an innovative idea, is to intentionally engineer diversity in order to address a global issue. The mission of Pearson College is to bring together people from all over the world to make education a force for peace and a sustainable future. But in order to bring together that profile of diversity, you have to have money. And for the last 43 years, thanks to the vision and generosity of our donors, Pearson College has been able to do that. In other words, someone had the idea that if you bring together into the same classroom a student who has been affected by conflict and a student who has not been affected by conflict, and a student who may in the future have the means to influence conflict, then you may actually have an opportunity to end conflict. Okay, attendance is over. Now you can get down to teaching your class, right? So you put up on the board a question for discussion. Maybe the question is, what is the value of diversity and inclusion. Immediately, two students sitting across the table from each other put up their hands. The hand of the first student belongs to a young man who is quite charming and extremely articulate, and who has had the opportunity to think about this issue amongst the politically and economically elite of his country when his family hosts lavish dinner parties for their friends. The other hand belongs to a young woman who is quite quiet, but has had the very best education that was offered by the refugee camp in which she has been living the last 6 years with the remaining people in her family. So who do you choose first? Who do you include first? Who do you exclude first? Well, let me give you a little teacher tip. You don't choose either one. You say to them, discuss this question with the person sitting opposite you at the table. And then you breathe. And after a robust conversation, the time of the class is coming to an end. And so you bring the class back together and you remind them of a few key points. First, diversity is a fact and it is beautiful. But in order for diversity to be useful, it really needs to meet 3 criteria. First, diversity needs to be recognized as a valuable resource that can be brought to bear on global issues. Secondly, diversity is as valuable as the number of different perspectives it includes. And third, diversity is most valuable when it is relevant to the issue at hand. The class has come to an end. You've gone overtime, as I think I may have with my 3 minutes. But before you end, you say to your students, as I would like to say to you now, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for sharing your ideas about diversity and inclusion with the other members. And thank you for listening so politely to mine.
Thank you, Andrew. And so now you've heard from an amazing alum, a very dedicated member of our faculty. Now you're going to get to see our students. We put on an annual show called One World in Victoria. You are all warmly invited to come in March. It's pretty amazing. In fact, it's so amazing that people often who don't know much about Pearson College think that we're a performing arts school. Such is the talent, tremendous talent of our students. So I'd just like to introduce the next 2 presentations by our students. There's a lot of talk, of course, and rightfully so, about reconciliation, which has become an important focus as Pearson takes very seriously the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action, particularly with respect to education, and as a residential school, a boarding school, founded on promoting diversity and inclusion, we feel we have a particular responsibility to respond to that call to action, including educating all of our students, Canadian and international, about Canada's history. We have many Indigenous students from across country, but also from around the world. And so with that as a background, one of the performances that you will see is called Uai, which is an Inuit entertainment dance performed by 9 of our talented students on Sila, a song by the tribe, by a tribe called Red and Inuk throat singer Tanya Tagak. Uai, or mass dance in English, is one of the oldest dramatic expressions among the Inuit people of Greenland. It is a way of dancing like the spirits Greenlandic people call tupilak, spirits that can transform from one animal creature into another, spirits that can both help and harm. But first, we have a spoken word performance by Ali Ibrahim Hirji, who is from Alberta, and his spoken word is called I Belong Here.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So, where do I begin? Well, first, a little context. My name is Ali Ibrahim, and I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I grew up in the suburbs. I grew up in the suburbs with 3 older siblings, so I guess you could say I was the punching bag of the family. And actually, in my neighborhood, we were one of 4 non-white families, and out of those 4, we were one of 2 brown families. So if you want to talk about diversity factor, it wasn't exactly there. But see, I didn't realize we were different. See, growing up, I was always the kid there, and I played with everyone just like every other kid, but I didn't realize that I was different. See, I went to school with all these kids, and I had play dates with all these kids, and I played sports with all these kids, but as I got older, something felt different. See, I was the only brown kid in my class, I was the only brown kid in my grade, and even when the whole school called to assembly with over 300 kids was there, I was the only brown kid there. And so you could understand how a little boy didn't really understand how he fit in here. And so when I was young, I kind of realized that this would mean that I would have to work extra hard. And what I mean by that is that everyone has their staircases through life, some with more steps than others, but it's a journey that everyone is going to have to take. And it just so happened that the people around me had smaller staircases than me. They had less steps in their journey. And I started to wonder why. Why is it that they have less steps? What did they have that I didn't? Well, what did they have? Well, they had the money, take away 10 steps. They had the social power, take away another 10 steps. And worst of all, they had something I couldn't control. They had the right skin color, take away 30 steps. And so you can imagine me as a young boy, I would sit at the bottom of my staircase and see how long of a journey I had up, how many more steps I had to climb. And so I started to question, what do I have? What do I have that could make this journey just a little bit smaller? How can I take away a few steps? Well, what did I have? Low income and unemployed parents. What does that get me? Add 10 steps. All right, well, listen, I'm a first-generation Canadian. I'm lucky, I made it. What does that get me? Add 20 steps. Okay, well, listen, I have something that no one will ever be able to take away from me. I'm a brown Muslim, and I'm proud to be here. Societal staircase, what does that get me? Add 30 steps. See, I would just get asked more questions for the same positions, more looks for being the only brown kid in the room, and more ignorance from the people that thought my opinion didn't matter because of my skin color. And so all those uncontrollable factors like race and religion, they drove me to change all the things that I could control. See, so I went to school every day and I tried out for every single sports team. I wanted to be the athlete. Everyone loves the athlete. And then I would go to class and I would try so hard and let no one know that I was trying. I wanted to have it all up here. And at recess, I would go out and I would play with these kids and I would untuck my shirt and be one of the cool kids because I wanted to be a part of something bigger. But the sad reality is that I mistook that for acceptance. See, I had to try to be the best at everything, and I tried to please everyone around me, but it was never truly me. And that was something that happened all the time. I remember it so clearly in grade 8. You know how stressful grade 8 can be with all the crazy work we get, okay? I was so excited for lunch that day. You know why? Because my mom had packed last night's samosas with ambli and chutney. Oh, just a taste of heaven. And so I was so excited for lunch. I sat down with my dinosaur lunch kit. I unzipped it. I took out my samosa. I dipped it in sauce. I put it up to my mouth. And right before I could take a bite, my friend said, "Ew, Ali's dog food smells, Ali's home food smells like dog food. Get it away." And so with this samosa just centimeters away from my mouth, I felt all the eyes turn to me. And I had a split second to make my decision. What was I going to do? And you know, looking back, I wish that I took the biggest bite of that samosa and I said, "That's me, this is me." But that's not what happened. See, what happened was I took that samosa and I saw everyone looking at me and I thought to myself, no, I can't make myself more different than I already am. And so what I did was I threw it away. No questions asked, and my life went on as normal as it could get. And don't get me wrong, I'm not ungrateful for where I am. I am so privileged right now to be talking to you, to be speaking to you. I'm so privileged to be here. But it is my duty to this country and to this continent to dream. And it is my duty to this place that I call home to push for a better future. See, we are all at the bottom of our staircases. Some of us here are actually in the middle, some of us may be closer to the top, but we are all still on this journey. Some staircases may be longer than others, some may have twists and turns, and some may have steps that we just need to leap over. But that is why we are all here. We are here to make friends, and we are here to make family. And suddenly, when I climb up my staircase with my friends, it doesn't feel so lonely. My staircase doesn't even seem like a challenge when I have a family to support me. See, we're all on our staircases, and we are all on our journey. We all have different staircases, and we all have different steps to take, but we can take those together. And I promise, side by side, that we will reach the top of our staircases, and we will one day be able to reach back and help the next person climbing up behind us. Because change doesn't start out there sometime in the future. No, change starts right here, right now, and change starts with you. Thank you.
Thank you for those two awesome performances. We have one performance left, and that's by Thomas Bambara from Burkina Faso, another spoken word performance entitled L'aube de la paix, the dawn of peace. Unity and intercultural understanding.
Chers auditeurs, je vous salue. Au moyen de la séduisante langue de Molière, j'aimerais mettre en lumière un espace qui défie l'imaginaire, à l'oreuil du bois, aux abords de la mer, un paradis sur terre, une communauté hors pair, à l'instar de l'aigle royal dans les airs. J'aimerais mettre en lumière Une génération révolutionnaire, une entité désert de solitaire, mais qui cultive l'âme solidaire. Une liée luttant contre ce monde devenu amer pour le rendre meilleur. Le nombril du monde qui croit fortement que les guerres, la galère, l'atmosphère et l'air atteints d'une infection très grave identifiée comme pollution ne sont toutes que des crises éphémères. Un lieu où la richesse n'est nullement pécuniaire, mais un dessein noble que l'on compte défendre, chair et âme, si nécessaire pour des millénaires. Un lieu où des inconnus rassemblés sont devenus frères. En somme, les UWC, nous sommes. Un monde, nous sommes. D'aucuns égal, mais similaire à l'Eldorado. Impossible pour moi de le vêtir de mots. Depuis que mon âme a effleuré le sol impérial de Pearson, je n'ai plus été la même personne. Mon égocentrisme détourné aveugle. Mon ignorance tombée sourde. Mes préjugés capitulés muets. Ma subjectivité, mes stéréotypes abattus, déchus. Veni, vidi, vici. Même lorsque nos genoux s'écrouleront par terre, jamais l'on ne se laissera faire. Jamais l'on ne se laissera taire. Jamais. Face à l'enfer ultime qui hante certaines communautés entières. Jamais, jamais, jamais. If not now, when? Une lumière radieuse au bout du sombre tunnel. If not us, who? Une jeunesse déterminée à voir le jour prochain ensoleillé de paix. Merci.
That was incredible. Thank you very much to those amazing students from Pearson College for showing us visually what this forum is all about, demonstrating what inclusion and diversity look like and why it's so important. That concludes the formal part of our program for this evening. The food stations will reopen. There is some drinks still available. There's lots of folks to mingle with. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and I look forward to seeing most of you tomorrow morning at UVic as we continue on the Victoria Forum journey. So thank you very much. Good night.